You are standing in the checkout line at a 24-hour pharmacy. It is 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. In your hand, a travel-sized toothpaste, a bottle of generic ibuprofen, and a pack of cotton swabs. The total is 12.47 cents. The cashier's name tag says, "Dear Leonie." She does not look up. She does not know that your phone buzzing silently in your right pocket contains a portfolio summary that crossed a number most people will never see in a lifetime. $1,247,000,000. You should feel powerful. You should feel electric. Instead, you feel tired. Not from the errand, from the math, the constant, invisible math of deciding who gets to see what, and the crushing realization that the feeling you chased for 11 years still hasn't arrived. Here is what psychology knows that the finance gurus ignore. The human brain does not scale emotionally. Your limbic system, the ancient hardware-level architecture of want, fear, and satisfaction, runs on the same firmware it used when you were 24 and overdrafting your checking account by $80. $1 billion does not upgrade your nervous system. It does not give you new emotions. It simply gives you the old emotions, but now they have nowhere to go. The arrival feeling you imagined, it is not late. It is structurally impossible. In the next 7 minutes, I am going to show you exactly why the 1.2B feeling never arrives, what your brain is actually doing when it stares at 12 figures and feels nothing, and the 3 practices that prevent your wealth from becoming a prison you built yourself. This is not a motivation speech. This is a psychological autopsy of the moment money stops being a solution and becomes a framework you cannot escape. We are told that success is supposed to be visible. A promotion post, the new car in the driveway, the watch that signals you have arrived. Social media has turned life into a continuous status broadcast, and your brain was never built to survive it. Evolutionarily, your amygdala, the part of your brain scanning for threat and tracking social standing, was designed for a village of roughly 150 people. It could track who had more grain, who had better shelter, who was rising, and who was falling. But it was never meant to process the highlight reels of 500 acquaintances, all performing abundance simultaneously, while you compare your lowest moments to their best. When your wealth becomes visible, something called the spotlight tax activates. Every person who knows what you have begins to relate to the money instead of to you. The cousin who calls after 4 years of silence. The friend who suddenly has a business idea that needs seed capital. The colleague who watches your order at dinner the way a judge watches a defendant. Your brain registers each microshift as social threat. Your cortisol rises. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for calm, complex decision-making, begins to allocate its limited resources to managing other people's perceptions instead of managing your own life. So you hide. You drive the 2018 Camry with a dent you never fixed. You wear the fleece with the grease stain. You perform fine but not exceptional. And the world believes you. But the cost is a permanent distance. Not from strangers. Strangers are easy. The distance that hurts is from people who knew you before. They still relate to the person who struggled. You no longer know how to relate to the person who arrived. This is where it gets interesting. When you choose secrecy, not as shame, but as straightening, but as strategy, your brain enters a state researchers call identity compartmentalization. You are simultaneously 2 people. The public self who drives the used Honda and complains about gas prices, and the private self who knows the exact number in the Q3 portfolio summary, the one that arrived with no exclamation mark, no champagne, just 12-point Arial in a fluorescent lit aisle. Here is the neuroscience. At $1 million, you feel it. You feel it in your shoulders. You feel it in your sleep. It is what researchers call a hedonic reset, a genuine improvement in baseline well-being. At 10 million, you still feel it, but differently. You feel it as optionality, the ability to say no, to quit, to wait. At 100 million, the feeling begins to invert. You no longer feel relief. You feel disconnection. The problems that occupy the people around you, rent, car payments, medical bills, are problems you have not experienced in years. You cannot relate to them. You cannot share them. At 1 billion, the inversion is complete. Wealth ceases to be a feeling and becomes a cognitive framework. A $50,000 expense registers the way a normal person registers a $5 expense. Not because you are callous, because your brain has recalibrated its scale. This is what psychologists call anhedonia, a flattening of affect that arrives when the dopaminergic reward system is no longer triggered by the things that used to trigger it. You know the clinical term because you looked it up at 2 a.m. 6 months ago, sitting in a hotel room in Singapore, trying to understand why the closing of a 9-figure acquisition felt like filing paperwork. The brain does not feel a billion. It can feel $340,000. It can feel a mortgage payment. It can feel the specific anxiety of a restaurant bill, but a billion is a conceptual artifact. It validates itself on spreadsheets while you stand in a pharmacy line wondering if you bought the right kind of toothpaste. This is not a bug in your system. This is hedonic adaptation, the feature that kept your ancestors alive on savannas. Your brain normalizes any baseline and then scans for threats relative to that baseline. $1 billion becomes the new zero remarkably fast. Faster than you would believe. Faster than you would ever admit out loud. But here's the dangerous part. There is one specific mistake that 90% of people make when they build this kind of wealth in silence. It does not look like a mistake. It looks like modesty. It looks like the Honda Pilot and the fleece from the sporting goods store and the shrug when someone asks what you do. The mistake is not the secrecy. The mistake is when the performance of ordinary starts to feel like a prison. When you've been pretending to be the person who cannot afford things for so long that you begin to believe your own costume. When stealth wealth becomes stealth self. And if you do not catch it, you will wake up one day with the number you wanted and the emotional range of someone who is still pretending they do not have it. I will tell you exactly how to avoid that in the next section. First, practice what I call cognitive anchoring. In finance, boring assets are the ones that keep paying while nobody watches. The laundromat, the parking lot. Apply this to your behavior. Deliberately expose yourself to small, concrete transactions to keep your scale calibrated to the world. Pay the 12.7 with a debit card. Fix the leaky faucet yourself. Walk through a hardware store aisle and hold the drain cleaner. These are not acts of humility. They are psychological maintenance. You are trying to feel something. Anything. When your habits are boring, your mind is free. Second, install a social thermostat. You need to consciously decide who gets access to which temperature of your life. Your accountant sees the folder. Your neighbor sees the Camry. Your best friend sees your time, not your balance sheet. This is not dishonesty. This is boundary architecture. The most psychologically healthy, wealthy people do not hide from everyone. They simply maintain different levels of disclosure for different levels of trust. Your brain needs at least one room where the full truth is known. Without that, the compartmentalization becomes a fracture, not a strategy. Third, and most importantly, practice dual identity integration. Once a month, do one thing that acknowledges both versions of you. Not a flashy purchase, not a performance, something private. Review your portfolio without anxiety. Walk through a neighborhood you could buy into without calculating square footage. Sit in the truth that you have built something, even if nobody clapped. This is how you prevent the costume from becoming the skin. You are not two people. You are one person who has learned to hold a truth quietly. The truth is, the 1.2B feeling never arrives because it was never supposed to. The number was never the point. The point was the architecture. The point was the proof that you could build something that worked. The point was the 4 quarters you gave to a stranger in a laundromat because you wanted to, not because she would ever know. The point was the $144 from a used vending machine in a dental office lobby, felt on a Thursday night at a folding table, unnamed and real. You are not hiding. You are choosing. And that choice, repeated over years of Tuesday afternoons and Wednesday, transfers and Saturdays at kitchen tables, nobody photographed, becomes the architecture of a self that nobody can take from you. The money compounds in the account, but the self compounds in the silence. If this video gave you something to sit with today, I want you to subscribe to the Einar Tour 26 now and comment below, I am the architecture. Let us fill the comments with that energy so the Einar Tour 26 community knows they are not alone in the silence.